Have you ever had a spiritual awakening, and instead of feeling lit up, you just felt empty? You saw through the illusion, the ego, the endless chasing. It all fell away. And then, silence. No fire, no drive, just a quiet numbness you can't explain. It's not depression, it's not burnout, but something deeper. Like your soul turned the volume down on life and forgot to turn it back up. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Carl Jung saw this coming, and he had a name for it. He called it the beginning of individuation, the real work of becoming your true self. But before that happens, everything false must die. And that death, it feels like being lost, numb, stuck, forgotten by the fire that once burned inside you. But what if that emptiness isn't the end, but the threshold of something far deeper, something ancient, something real? That's what we're about to uncover. Somewhere along your path, maybe after a profound insight or a complete breakdown, you felt it, a shift. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't come with fireworks. It came in the quiet. First, it felt like freedom, like the veil had finally lifted. You saw the patterns, the noise, the games we all play, and you no longer wanted to play. But slowly, something else crept in. The world lost its color. Your ambition vanished. You stopped chasing, not in rebellion, but in resignation, a kind of sacred sigh of the soul that whispered, "None of it matters, not like it used to." And here's the cruel irony. This moment, the one you thought would ignite you, leaves you hollow, because you're not who you were, and you're not yet who you're becoming. You're in between, and no one warned you about the in-between. Carl Jung did. He called it a psychological death, a collapse of the structures that once gave your life meaning. Your career, your goals, your relationships, even your sense of time, all of it starts to dissolve. You see, awakening isn't the finish line, it's demolition day. It tears down the false self, the ego identity built from years of striving, proving, pretending. And when that scaffolding falls, there's nothing left to stand on. No map, no direction, just silence. That silence, that's where most people panic. Because motivation doesn't just disappear, it becomes irrelevant. You're not lazy. You've simply outgrown the rewards your ego used to chase. The praise, the applause, the status, the checklist. It all feels dead, not because you failed, but because your soul is done performing. And yet, this is where the transformation begins. Jung said, your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. And when you finally look inside, past the noise, past the fear, you meet the void. A sacred, terrifying stillness that doesn't want your productivity. It wants your presence. It wants your honesty. And until you honor that, everything else will feel fake. But let me be clear, this stage is not depression in the clinical sense, but it's not mental illness. It's a spiritual reprogramming. Your old operating system is crashing, so a deeper one can be installed. This is why you can't force your way out. You can't hack your motivation back, because the person who's trying to get it back no longer exists. You've stepped off the stage, and now you're staring at the audience, wondering who was wearing that costume all these years. Jung called this process individuation, the death of the persona and the birth of the authentic self. But before the birth comes the void. And the void is sacred. It's the cocoon between caterpillar and butterfly. But in that cocoon, there's no form, just goo. And goo doesn't hustle. Goo doesn't dream. Goo dissolves. And that's exactly what your soul is asking you to do. Let go. Let go of who you think you need to be. Let go of the voice telling you you're falling behind. Let go of the timeline, the titles, the expectations. Let yourself fall apart. Because only in that falling will something truer rise. And when it does, it won't scream for attention. It won't chase recognition. It will whisper. It will hum quietly in the background, calling you to rebuild your life. Not from fear or proving, but from resonance, from truth, from alignment. So if you're here, Lost in the stillness after awakening, you are not broken, you are not lazy, you are not behind, you're just between versions of yourself. And that in between is holy. Let it shape you, let it strip you, because on the other side of the silence is the self you were always meant to meet. Carl Jung didn't write about spiritual awakenings the way we do now. No viral quotes, no trending reels. But he understood what happens when the unconscious becomes conscious. He saw the terrain most people fear to walk through, the darkness behind the light. His words were clear even if they make us uncomfortable. Enlightenment doesn't come by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. It sounds beautiful until you realize what it demands. Because to bring the darkness into the light means facing every illusion we've built our lives around. Every mask, every story, every buried pain we tried to outrun with success, status, even spirituality. This is what most awakening journeys leave out. The part where the light doesn't save you, it exposes you. It burns through your certainty, and that's not failure, that's transformation. Jung knew the ego would fight back. It doesn't want to die. It wants a plan, a role, a goal. It wants to be someone. But once the illusion is shattered, the ego doesn't vanish. It becomes confused, like a king stripped of his crown, still shouting orders in an empty throne room. You haven't lost motivation. You've lost the map that used to tell you where to go. And in that space, where there's no destination, no deadline, only presence, that's where the soul finally begins to speak. Jung believed that without this sacred pause, individuation couldn't happen. The real self, the soul-level self, doesn't rise until the surface self collapses. And that collapse isn't just painful, it's necessary. In a world obsessed with productivity, with always knowing what's next, stillness looks like failure. But Jung would say it's the beginning of real power. Not power over others, but power within. The kind that doesn't shout, the kind that doesn't need applause. So when you find yourself in that strange, quiet limbo, unable to push, unable to care, it's not a breakdown. It's not apathy. It's not weakness. It's your psyche calling you home. And Jung's greatest insight was this: what feels like falling apart is often the soul putting itself back together. What you're feeling right now, this stillness, this blankness, this inability to move forward, it's not the end of your path, it's the middle, a sacred, invisible middle that most people skip, avoid, or mislabel. Carl Jung warned us about this exact moment, the void between who you were and who you're becoming. He said our modern world fears it, distracts itself from it, misunderstands it as laziness or failure. But Jung knew better. He saw this pause for what it truly is: initiation. This is the space where the ego has collapsed, but the soul has not yet emerged. It's not burnout, it's not depression. It's what ancient traditions called the hermit phase, the desert, the cocoon. It's the moment when the caterpillar dissolves into goo. Not a bug, not a butterfly, just nothing. And goo doesn't hustle. Goo doesn't post quotes about alignment. Goo just melts. And maybe that's what your life feels like right now. Melted. Your plans feel irrelevant. Your old goals don't move you. Your carefully curated identity doesn't fit anymore. And inside, there's this heavy silence that the outside world keeps trying to rush you out of. But here's what no one tells you. The sacred pause isn't a glitch in your awakening. It's part of the design. Because your psyche is wise, and it will stall your motivation on purpose. It will shut down your productivity, your ambition, your clarity, until you finally stop and face what you've been avoiding. Not as punishment, but as a form of spiritual protection. You can't integrate what's unconscious when you're constantly performing. You can't hear your soul's whisper when the ego is still screaming. So, the pause, this vast, empty stillness, is the space your transformation needs to breathe. But it's hard, and lonely, and terrifying. especially in a world where value is measured by output, where silence is mistaken for weakness, where your worth is tied to how much you do. In that world, sacred stillness looks like failure. But Jung would tell you this is the real work. This is the space where shadow rises, where the soul rearranges itself in the dark, where you're no longer operating from fear or proving, but from something ancient and true. This pause is not passive, it's deeply alive beneath the surface. Your inner world is metabolizing old beliefs, buried grief, false desires. You are being emptied for a reason, so something deeper can enter. Not motivation that burns fast and dies, but a flame that can endure. And when you stop resisting the silence, when you allow yourself to just be in it without judgment, something strange starts to happen. The stillness softens, the fog begins to lift, and instead of chasing purpose, you begin to feel called, not by the ego, not by society, but by your soul. And that calling doesn't shout, it hums, it tugs. It whispers things like rest, grieve, let go, create, begin again. So if you're floating in that liminal space, disconnected and numb, know this: you're not broken, you're becoming. You're not lazy, you're in the pause between stories. And that pause is holy. Stay there, honor it, because what comes next will not be built by the old you. It will be born from the silence you were brave enough to enter. Your ego didn't die when you awakened. It unraveled. The mask didn't fall off with a clean break. It dissolved, slowly, painfully, beautifully, like watching the house you built brick by brick begin to crumble in your hands. Not because you did something wrong, but because it was never meant to hold the truth you're becoming. The version of you that chased goals, followed plans, played roles. That was your ego. That was your persona, as Jung called it. The part of you crafted for approval, survival, performance. It wore many faces. It was efficient, ambitious, strategic, and exhausted. And when awakening struck, it couldn't hold up anymore, because now you see the game, and you don't want to win it. You want to leave the board entirely. This is the collapse, not of your life, but of your false identity. And in the aftermath, nothing fits. Your career feels hollow. Your relationships feel forced. Even your dreams feel like someone else's. And that's because they were. They were built by a self that no longer exists. That ego self needed status, validation, direction. But the soul doesn't. The soul isn't interested in achievement, it's interested in alignment. It doesn't hustle, it harmonizes. And when your ego collapses, the soul begins to take the wheel. But it doesn't rush, it doesn't yell, it whispers, gently, quietly. And at first that whisper is hard to trust, because you're used to noise. You're used to checklists and metrics and 5-year plans. But now, they don't move you. You stare at your goals and feel nothing. You listen to your old playlists and they sound like static. You open your planner and close it just as fast. This is not failure. This is recalibration. You're shifting from a fuel source built on fear to one powered by truth. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation, the sacred realignment of the ego with the self. Not the little self that wants to be seen, but the deeper self that sees everything. The one that was buried beneath expectations. The one that doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. And this self moves differently. It doesn't sprint, it doesn't strive, it listens, it waits, it responds. You're not here to serve the ego. You're here to integrate it, not destroy it, but align it, to use it as a tool, not a master. To bring it into service of something bigger, wiser, eternal. And that's why your old motivation had to collapse, because it was wired for performance, not presence. It ran on scarcity, not soul. It kept you busy, never fulfilled. But now, something new is stirring. It's subtle, it's quiet, but it's real. a deeper movement, a nudge from within, not to chase but to create, not to impress but to express. This is the shift from ego to essence, from persona to presence, from doing to being. So if everything that used to drive you is falling away, let it. You're not here to return to who you were. You're here to become who you truly are. Bigger than the collapse comes the silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that stretches, the kind that feels endless, the kind where days blur and purpose feels like a language you forgot how to speak. This is what ancient mystics called the hermit phase. Jung saw it too, not as a pathology, but as a rite of passage. A sacred in-between space where you're no longer who you were, and not yet who you're becoming. It doesn't look like enlightenment. It doesn't look like bliss. It looks like sitting on your floor at 2 a.m., wondering why you can't bring yourself to care about anything. It looks like pulling away from people who once felt like home. It looks like stillness misdiagnosed as apathy. And the world will try to rush you through this part. It will tell you to get back to work, back to goals, back to normal. But there is no going back, because you've tasted something deeper. You've glimpsed the illusion, and now your soul refuses to participate in the performance. The persona has fallen, the old motivations have dissolved, and what's left is the void. But don't confuse the void with failure. Don't confuse detachment with numbness. This is not depression. This is deconstruction. This is where the real work happens. Beneath the surface, in silence, in solitude. It's here, in the quiet, that your system starts to detox from years of conditioning, from roles you didn't choose, from dreams that weren't yours, from the belief that you had to earn your worth. And in this detox, nothing makes sense. You question everything. Your identity, your purpose, even your sanity. But this questioning is sacred. It means the programming is unraveling. It means something real is trying to break through. Jung knew this stage was unavoidable. He warned that if we try to skip it, we fall into spiritual bypassing, pretending everything is fine, floating above our pain, detaching from the world instead of engaging with it. But the self doesn't want escape. It wants embodiment. It doesn't want you to transcend life. It wants you to live it, fully, honestly, soulfully. And before you can do that, you must pass through the fire of not knowing, of feeling invisible, of sitting with yourself when there's nothing left to distract you. This is the cocoon. This is the descent. It doesn't post well on social media. It's not aesthetic. It's not sexy, but it's necessary. Because the new self, the real self, cannot be built on top of noise. It only rises through stillness. So if you're deep in the hermit phase, don't run, don't force your way out, don't judge the pause, trust it. Because this is where you remember what's real. This is where you hear your soul whisper again, after years of silence. You are not broken, you are becoming. You are not lost, you are in the cocoon. You are not behind, you are exactly where transformation begins. And then, almost without warning, something begins to stir. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet shift. A new rhythm inside you, faint but undeniable. After the collapse, after the silence, after the cocoon, you begin to feel a pull. It's not ambition, it's not adrenaline, it's not the ego trying to reclaim control. It's something older, something softer, something real. This is the beginning of the self emerging. Carl Jung called it the individuated self, the wholeness that lives beneath the masks, the eternal center, the soul's true voice, not the one that performs, not the one that needs to be seen, but the one that simply is. The self doesn't rush. It doesn't shout orders or demand attention. It speaks in resonance, in gut feelings, in dreams. In synchronicities you can't explain, but can't ignore. And when it begins to lead, life stops being about performance. It becomes about participation. You stop asking, "What should I do?" and start asking, "What feels honest?" You stop chasing clarity and start recognizing it when it arrives. This is not a motivational high. It's not about grinding harder. It's not a return to hustle. In fact, it's the opposite. It's the end of pretending, the end of forcing, the end of betraying yourself for a life that no longer fits. The self doesn't resurrect your old goals. It plants new ones, not outside in but inside out. You're drawn to create even when no one's watching. You start saying no to what looks good but feels wrong. You're not checking boxes anymore. You're following threads of truth. You begin to feel pulled, not pushed. You no longer move out of fear of missing out. You move because something in your bones says yes. That's the self. It's not obsessed with outcomes. It's devoted to process. It doesn't need praise. It's fueled by presence. This is the soul's version of motivation. Not to impress, not to conquer, but to connect. Jung called this living the symbolic life, a way of being where dreams matter, inner imagery guides you, and intuition becomes your compass. It's not fantasy, it's not delusion. It's living from the deepest parts of you, where meaning arises naturally, without explanation. You begin to trust your inner rhythm, your timing. Your silence, your no becomes sacred. Your yes becomes a doorway. You stop grasping. You start listening. And here's the beautiful irony. This kind of motivation, the soul-led kind, is far more effective than anything your ego ever chased. Because it's sustainable. It doesn't burn out. It doesn't fragment you. It aligns you. You're not fighting to keep up anymore. You're remembering how to come home to yourself. And no, you won't always feel lit up. You'll still feel tired, confused, grieving, because that's part of being human. But you'll never again feel that constant ache of self-abandonment. You'll never again feel like you're dragging your soul through a life that doesn't fit, because now you're being led by something deeper. And when the self leads, your life changes quietly, powerfully, from the inside out. So if you've been waiting for the fire to come back, for the spark to return, maybe you've been waiting for the wrong thing. Maybe the fire you lost was ego, and the one rising now is soul. Not a flame that flickers in the wind, but a light that cannot be put out. The kind of flame that doesn't shout, but burns steady, soft, certain, and eternal. When the self begins to lead, something subtle yet profound changes. Life doesn't get louder, it gets deeper, more meaningful, more alive in ways that words can't quite hold. This is what Carl Jung called living symbolically, a life not dictated by logic and metrics alone, but by soul, by synchronicity, by the inner compass that was always whispering beneath the noise. You stop trying to dominate life, you start dancing with it, and the questions you ask begin to change. Instead of, "What should I do?" you ask, "What's quietly calling me?" Instead of, "What's the plan?" you ask, "Where is life nudging me next?" Instead of chasing validation, you start listening for resonance. You begin to move in alignment with your internal rhythm, not external pressure. You start to feel how life speaks through signs, through dreams, through feelings in the body you once ignored. The universe becomes a mirror, not a machine. And suddenly, the ordinary becomes holy. A walk becomes a meditation. A conversation becomes a transmission. A day of rest becomes sacred rebellion. You no longer live to prove your worth. You live to embody your truth. You begin to understand that your life is a dialogue between the ego and the soul, and when the soul leads, everything begins to harmonize. Even your ambition doesn't vanish, it transforms. It's no longer about climbing, it's about offering. It's about building what matters, creating what heals, expressing what's real. This is where you realize Soul doesn't want success at the cost of your peace. It doesn't want noise without meaning. It doesn't want perfection, it wants presence. And when you start living this way, you begin to notice things fall away. Plans that once excited you, gone. Relationships that no longer serve, fade. Ideas that once defined you, irrelevant. And in their place, space, silence, depth, room for something authentic to take root. Jung taught that the symbolic life isn't fantasy, it's a return to wholeness. It's the recognition that life isn't a straight line, but a spiral, that healing isn't a destination, but a remembering, that you're not here to be perfect, you're here to be whole. And wholeness includes everything, the light, the shadow, the grief, the parts of you that perform, and the parts of you that fall apart. All of it belongs, all of it is sacred. So if you're in this space, rebuilding from the inside, led not by pressure but by presence, you are already living symbolically. You are already walking the path of the self. And that path won't always make sense to others. It won't always look impressive on the outside, but on the inside, it will feel honest. Quietly right, deeply yours. You will begin to trust your timing. You will know when to move and when to rest, when to speak and when to listen. You will live by resonance, not reputation. And this is where the most unexpected truth of all reveals itself. Living from the self doesn't always look grand. It often looks beautifully ordinary. It looks like peace. It sounds like silence. It feels like coming home, not back to who you were, but forward into who you always were, underneath it all. So if you've walked through the darkness, if you've let go of who you used to be, if you're learning to follow the quiet call of your soul, then this is it. You are living symbolically. You are living soulfully. You are living the life Jung said few ever dare to live, not for applause, not for ego, but for truth. And in the end, that's all the self ever wanted. If you've made it this far, you already know something most people don't. You've seen behind the curtain. You've touched the silence beneath the noise. You've walked through the death of identity and into the mystery of becoming. And maybe you're still in it. Maybe you're still dissolving, still waiting for the spark to return, still wondering what it all means. That's okay. That's more than okay. That means you're doing the real work. Because this journey, the awakening, the collapse, the sacred pause, the emergence of the self, it's not a straight line. It's a spiral, a remembering, a deepening, a homecoming. You don't have to go back to your old motivation. You're not here to chase. You're here to listen, to align, to live from soul, not strategy, from truth, not performance. And if that's what you're navigating, you're not alone. You're one of us, so take a breath. And if this message met you where you are, if it helped name what you couldn't quite explain, leave a comment. Let others know they're not walking through this alone. And if you want more content like this, where psychology meets soul and language touches the invisible, subscribe to this channel. Because here, we're not chasing light, we're integrating the dark. We're not performing transformation, we're embodying it. Awakening was never the end of your story. It's where the real story finally begins.